Hey, this is Christopher McDonald, and you're listening to the House of L.
Welcome into the House of L. I'm so excited to be joined today by, I think the term Renaissance man gets thrown around a lot, but I truly do mean that in this regard. A producer, actor, all-around nice guy, snappy dresser, Mr. Christopher McDonald. How are you, sir?
I'm doing fantastic, even better since you identified me as being a snappy dresser.
That's the one that hinged on? Okay, good to know.
Out of everything, that one popped.
Christopher, you brought to life on the big screen for the first time ever Mr. Ron Troupe in James Gunn's Superman this summer. It from everything I've seen online for this close-knit cast, it looks like just an absolute whirlwind of a time over the past couple years for you guys. And now that the movie has been shared with the world, we're now less than 48 hours away from people being able to watch it at home, digitally. How have you been feeling about this experience?
Man, it's been definitely up and down. Obviously, mostly up. The downs are, not really real downs, but it's a movie of this magnitude. Naturally, you're gonna have some type of feeling and get your feelings hurt if someone says one thing or you worry. It's crazy. So those are the few downs, but 100% always up.
Yeah.
And I pinch myself every day. It doesn't feel real sometimes. And other days, I'm just filled with gratitude, and it does feel real, and I'm soaking myself in it. And I have to say, a lot of my friends have been really good about keeping me present. Not that I'm, a defeatist, or not that I'm overly humble, but I find myself a lot saying, "Oh, no, it's not a big deal." And my friends will always check me, and say, "No, it's a huge deal. It's Superman. Enjoy this moment. Soak it in." So I'm constantly finding myself just sitting here, taking moments. Whereas I usually would meditate maybe every 3 hours for about 10 minutes, I sit and kind of sit and think about Superman.
I listen. I could appreciate that more than most people. I might say. As I said off air, talking to you, I'm excited to talk about you and I share a journalism background. Producer backgrounds. Obviously, and that's one of the reasons I'm just so fascinated by your story, because you've worked in the TV industry, in the film industry. You have a litany of credits, and then but in front of the camera. How did this transition kind of happen from you? Because you're right now you're producing Kelly Clarkson's show,
Right.
And working behind the scenes there, in addition to other projects. But getting to see you on the big screen this summer was a real treat.
Yeah, it's funny. If you told me even 2 years ago that I would be in front of the camera at all, I would say you were crazy, which is ironic because those were my aspirations when I was younger. Watching, it dates all the way back to the Cosby Show. I saw Rudy, and we were about the same age. Her best friend Bud, at the time, everyone thought I looked like him, Kenny Bud, and I remember thinking I can do that, and I kind of wanted to do it for a long time, up until I went to college. But honestly, my parents are immigrants. They're not the most, open-minded people when it comes to committing to acting or putting money into schooling if I'm going to act, which is ironic because they were very supportive of my oldest brother, who went to theater school, and he went to Western Kentucky and studied theater. But I figured, oh, let me get into journalism because I love news, I love filmmaking, and I love documentaries. And I figured, okay, what school can I find that's kind of cohesive? And I found Emerson College, and it's an industry school, an entertainment industry school. And the goal was for me to have my studies in journalism, but participate in the extracurricular activities when it came to acting. And I would do student films, and whatever way I can get in front of the camera. And I also wanted to be a broadcast journalist. At one point, I went to college in the 90s. I wanted to be an MTV VJ. I was all about being in front of the camera. But it wasn't until I got into the industry where I started thinking of other things. I had a huge affinity for screenwriting, and that's one of the reasons I went to Emerson also. So I dove headfirst into that, and which led me to producing. And suddenly, I was getting paid for it, and I said, let me stick here. And I just stuck in that lane. But then just one day, it was actually, I can tell you the exact, it was December 17th of 2023. I'm sitting down with my son. My wife is in Turks and Caicos doing a girls trip. And I get a text from James. And I look at my text. I'm like, oh, what's James doing? And he says, hey, you moved to Atlanta, right? Because I was living in Los Angeles for 24 years. And I decided to make a change. And I said, yeah, I live in Atlanta now. I just recently moved here. He goes, okay, that's what I thought. We're going to be doing a lot of shooting Superman and I'm in Atlanta. I'm moving Peacemaker to Atlanta. So selfishly, let's get together and hang out. Come to the house. I said, yeah, of course. And then he sent me this Google link of Ron Troupe. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed to admit this now, but I didn't know who he was. I just saw a guy with glasses, specifically a black dude with glasses. And my mind kind of went to a place, but I kept thinking, nah, he's not. This isn't about me. And he kind of buried the lead because he just started talking about it'd be cool to have you come hang out at the set. And I'm thinking, what set? And at the same time, I'm looking at the link, and at the time, it just said Ron Troupe, DC comic character. That's
Mm-hmm.
it. And I'm thinking, okay, it's a DC comic. It must be Peacemaker because I know it's not Superman. There's no way he's talking to me about Superman. And he goes, yeah, it'd be fun to have you hang out at the set and catch up, and yeah, it'll be a good time. And I didn't want to say, hey, are you asking me to play this character? Because if he wasn't, then it'd been really embarrassing if he said, what? No. But he wasn't saying it. So finally, I just said, what are you saying? He said, oh, yeah, I would love for you to play this character. I said, okay, is this for Peacemaker? And he goes, no, it's Superman. I said, what? What? I said, okay. Well, when do we start? He said, oh, no, talk to Lars, one of the executive producers. He knows all the details. I'm just passing this on to you. And I said, and again, if it doesn't work with your schedule, we'll find you something else. And I'm looking, seeing that he's a Daily Planet character. And I thought, I don't care if I had to do something extremely important, like with the FBI or whatever. There was no way I was going to stick to that other plan and say no to this. I was going to make it work. So that's how that began. And I told him, yeah, I'm committed. And the next day I had the phone call and I said, no matter what, I know you guys are going over the dates. And it just so happened the dates worked perfectly for me. But yeah, and I committed. And that's how that happened.
That's fantastic. So you obviously already being in Atlanta, and then you got to go to Cleveland as well.
Yes.
I just got back from Cleveland, first time ever being there, and that was a fantastic experience. And I think for you guys all as well, it seemed like everybody was very welcoming. I know you went to Jerry Siegel's house like we did,
Yeah.
and got to do some of those experiences. So I know how much that meant for me, and I can only assume it did for you guys as well. But having your journalism background, you and I both being journalism people, I'm one of my favorite aspects of Superman is the planet. So I can only imagine for you what that felt like to be in one of the most famous bullpens in the world, getting to work every day among some of the most famous journalists in the world, also, be it fiction or fact. But what was that like on set in Atlanta in the interior of the planet?
So that was, it's funny because I don't even know if I'm supposed to disclose where the interior of the planet was shot. Because I saw this interview with Rachel, and someone had asked her a similar question. She goes, "Oh, I'm not supposed to disclose where we shot the days."
That's fine. I know where it is. So
Yeah.
just talk to me. Just
Okay.
don't talk
Okay.
to the
Cool.
audience.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Because I was like, man, do I say it? Okay.
You're
Thank you.
good. You're good. We'll leave it out for everybody else.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. It was absolutely magical, and I remember the days leading up to shooting in the planet. I was there for a whole week beforehand because they brought us in, the Daily Planet folks, a week beforehand for two reasons: for weather cover, and naturally, James wanted us to get together and bond and feel like actual coworkers, like we actually knew each other, which worked flawlessly. Because by the time we stepped on set, I developed a huge rapport with them. I had already been friends with Michaela. Michaela and I go back about 17 years.
Oh,
So
that's
we were
cool.
already friends, yeah. But the others, I didn't know. So we developed this rapport. But I remember we were having one night we were having dinner, and this was about maybe 2 days before we were going to shoot the planet stuff. And James had on his phone, he goes, I want you guys to see this. And it was the interior of the planet. He wanted to show us the big globe.
Hmm.
And I remember I was the only person who didn't look. I didn't want to see it at all. I wanted to walk in and completely be surprised. So in my mind, we think of Richard Donner's Superman, and
Sure.
you see the planet there. It looks like your typical newsroom. It
Mhm.
has the humming fluorescent lights. And then the funny thing is, I was actually worried about being on set for so long with those humming lights because I'm very sensitive to humming lights. I mean, I don't want to digress, but there's a scene in Joe versus the Volcano before Tom Hanks decides he's going
Oh
to
yeah. Yeah.
quit his job. Yeah, and he's
Yeah.
sitting under the humming lights. That messed me up as a kid. So to this day, if I ever had to work in that atmosphere, I hated it. So there was a little bit of worry about that because I was thinking it's going to look like the Richard Donner office. And even when you see, with Henry Cavill, the Daily Planet office there had that same kind of
Mhm.
feel. So I'd expected that. So imagine my surprise when I walked in and it's just this majestic building
Mhm.
that looks outworldly. Because I remember looking around thinking, wait a minute, when does this movie take place again? Because that person is dressed like he's in the 30s. That office worker, because the extras were already in place, that
Sure.
office worker looks like she's from the 50s. And this dude over here has a Kango with the gold chain. So I'm confused. So everyone's just dressed differently. So that was surreal, but just looking around and seeing how majestic it looked, and the fog machine was already going, so it had this little bit of mist, and I'll never forget it. They took us to this back kind of holding room, and they took the cast to the back holding room in the meantime, while they went over the rules for the extras and kind of had them set. And then when they called us to set, I remember just walked us individually to our desks. So, okay, Clark, this is your desk. And you see in the film, he has this tiny corner desk, which kind
Mhm.
of, I don't know, makes sense to his character, I guess, because he's still somewhat new, not that new. And then Beck went over to Steve's desk, which was a bigger one. Michaela went over to Kat's. And then I saw where Rachel's desk was, and I saw where Jimmy's desk was. And I was thinking, I was like, am I going to have a desk? Or am I just going to be just standing around? And it's hard to tell what, the final cut of the film, but you do see me pop in. I'm right on the other side of Lois,
Mhm.
and they sat me at my desk, and I'll never forget sitting down. I remember just sitting there taking a deep breath, thinking like, "Ooh, I don't want to cry," because I get really emotional easily. Because when I was looking at all the details, handwritten notes of my interview with the mayor, handwritten notes of my interview about LexCorp, a frame photo of what I assume the woman is Lucy Lane. Because
Mhm.
there's you with a woman, it must be Lucy Lane.
Mhm.
All these little fine details that the camera would never pick up and didn't pick up, but there just in case. And I was blown away. Then I felt, wow, because I had quit journalism in 2003 full time, and I remember thinking, okay, now I'm doing it again. I'm doing journalism. So it was a very special full circle moment.
Yeah, definitely. And now you can see. I won't admit on air how many times I've seen the movie now. But you can see definitely your desk after the Jor-El's message gets played and
That's
all the
right. Yes.
activity happens in the planet. And there was some more stuff with you that ultimately didn't get cut out. I know when Clark first comes in the office there, I think there's an interaction between you two.
Yes,
Like
that
you,
didn't make it. Are you talking
yeah,
about? Yes.
that
Yes.
didn't make it. That didn't make it. Yeah,
Yes.
tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, so it was our very, very first shot of the Daily Planet. And it's meant to be seamless, where you see Clark come off the street and he walks in, and of course, he sees Perry White first, and then he
Hmm.
sees Steve Lombard, and Steve Lombard starts ribbing him. So Steve Lombard's ribbing him and, just basically getting in his face. But we're all excited because Clark got the cover. And I'm supposed to walk by and punch him in the shoulder, right? And to keep it moving. And, Becca's, he comes from improv, he comes from Saturday Night Live and sketch
Hmm.
comedy. And he was so fun to work with. And he would throw things in there. He was really good about keeping everyone involved in the situation. And when he makes fun of Clark, and Clark says, "Oh, he goes, hi, Ma," on the phone, and Steve goes, "Ma."
Hmm.
That scene initially kept going, and it happens right after I punch Clark to give him this congratulatory punch on the arm. And the funny thing is, when we did it the first time, you, James is on the voice of God, the God mic, and he goes, "Chris, so let's do that again. Come on, man. You got to give him a punch. Actually, punch him in the shoulder." I'm thinking, oh, I don't want to punch him because he is the lead. And I don't want to get in trouble on the first
Day
day.
one. Yeah.
On day one, if I hurt the lead, even though it's ridiculous because David's a big guy,
Yeah.
but I still didn't want to do it. So every take was kind of a soft punch. It was like a little soft punch, and I kept it moving. And Steve makes a joke, and he pulls me into the joke. He's like, "Hey, Ron, he's calling his ma," and I look back, and I laugh, and I keep it moving. And then finally, David pulls me aside, and he's like, "Hey, Chris, let me talk to you." I said, "Okay." And I'm thinking, "Ah, shit, what did I do? Did I punch him too hard, even though I didn't?" And he goes, "Hey, man, that punch?" And I'm thinking, yeah, I punched him too hard. And he goes, "No, man, really give it to me. I can take it. Come on, punch me. You heard James. Give me a punch." I'm thinking, okay. And I don't think I ever really punched him that hard. I still kept it soft. But yeah, but that was the deal. And then, just to add to it, it's kind of a continuous shot. He keeps walking, and even though they intercut with the phone call with Mom and Pa Kent, how we shot it, it's continuous. He walks by Kat, he walks in, he sees Jimmy, Lois comes. But what ended up happening when we shot it is James had me walk by and punch him, and I go to the big globe, which is the receptionist desk,
Mm-hmm.
and I wasn't given direction of what to do next. And I thought, well, what do I do next? And that shot is going on for another 5 minutes because they kept it continuous.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, okay, next take, I'm going to put myself back in the shot because now I'm the only planet worker not in that shot.
Mm-hmm.
So I went and I grabbed the paper, folded it under my arm, and I walked all the way back. And I walk around after Lois pours the sugar. And I sit down in my desk chair. And the shot calls for Lois, Jimmy, and Clark to look up at the TV, at the news. And you see that overhead shot. But we shot many angles. And I get in my chair, it's on wheels, and I wheel into I decided, I was like, I'm going to wheel into this shot and be in the shot. So I wheeled myself in, thinking James is going to, maybe or maybe not, after we cut, come and say, "Hey, Chris, don't wheel into the shot." But instead he goes, "Oh, no, that's great. So Henry, to the DP, we're going to come around and get this shot just in case of Troupe coming in and looking up at the TV also." And I said, perfect. I found myself in the shot. But in the final cut, they went with the overhead
Yeah.
of Clark, Lois, and Jimmy. And I'm literally right there, but I'm not in the shot. So
But
I'm
not in
like,
the shot. Oh man. Well, it's great because of course, like I said, being a huge fan of the planet, but in so much of the ramp up to the marketing and everything, the planet was so prevalent in the first teaser and so many of like the social media aspects. So I was expecting a whole lot more planet than what we ultimately got, and I'm
hmm
looking forward to the digital release.
hmm
Obviously has deleted scenes, so I'm hoping to see more of the planet
Me too.
when
Me
that
too.
drops.
And I hope it's not. I hope it's. Sometimes you get deleted scenes, but they're the edited scenes of the
Right.
deleted scenes.
Right.
So I'm hoping because we had a lot of fun, and I'm sure you've seen it in places too, where James said some of the most fun he had doing the movie was the planet scenes,
Hmm.
because we just really had a lot of fun. And again, I mean, everyone was great, but I like to call out Beck just because he was just so good at making a scene really colorful and taking it to another level. And with James, whether it was David, Rachel, or anybody else, if he saw something he liked, he added to it. I mean, I don't want to jump ahead, but even with the tea craft scene,
Hmm.
I haven't talked about this at all with anybody, but the tea craft scene initially, I wasn't written in that scene. you know. But by the time James had told me about the role, that's when they had just written me in the scene. And I remember when I was talking to the producer, he was going down everywhere we were going to shoot, and he mentioned Cleveland. And he said, "Yeah, so we're rewriting something right now where you're in the T craft scene. It's like a spaceship." And I thought, "Ooh, a spaceship scene? Okay, amazing." And so that's going to take place in Cleveland. So I knew that. So one of the days we were shooting the planet, we were shooting the scene where we were running out of the planet to run up the stairs to go to the T craft.
Mm-hmm.
And we had shot that about probably a week before we shot the interior of the T craft, and about 3 weeks before we shot the roof scene of the T craft and the street scene of the T craft. And I remember while we were shooting that initially, in the film you see it as Perry White goes, "Grant, Troupe,
Mm-hmm.
come on," and then he goes and he looks to Steve and goes, "You can come too." But
Mm-hmm.
that's not how it was shot originally.
Okay.
Originally, when we were about to shoot it, he goes, or when we do the take, he goes, "Grant, Troupe, Lombard, come on." And I forget who on the set came to James afterwards, and he was kind of like, "Hey, we kind of got a problem." And James goes, "What?" And he goes, "There are only 5 seats in the tea craft." And I'm sitting there quiet watching them thinking, "Oh man, they're gonna cut my ass out." There are only 5 seats. I want to be in the spaceship because at the time I would call it a spaceship. And James goes, "Oh man." And then the guy said something about, "Oh, we can call up and have them, engineer another seat." James goes, "No, it wouldn't make sense because we already." No, I got this. I got this. He goes, "Let me think about it in a moment." And he goes, and this is the genius of James. On the fly, he goes, "Okay, Wendell. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna say Grant and Troupe, and then you're all gonna walk out." And then Steve's gonna be pissed and be like, "Wait, what about me?" That whole thing. There's more to it than what you finally
Hmm.
see, but he makes this whole production of it, and then he goes, "Okay, you can come too." And not to give it away in case it ends up in the deleted scenes, but it makes for a really funny interaction between Ron and Steve because we're the last ones on the T craft when we realize there's one seat left. So yeah, it was just so that was just really fun. It was on the fly and yeah, it was a great experience.
And it worked out well because every showing I've been to, Beck's line right there, that quick, "Why don't I have a seat?" Yeah,
Why
that
don't I
has
have a
that
seat?
has killed every single time. That's been the one consistent moment in every time that has just broken people.
Man,
And I
and
know,
again, I really hope the full version of what we shot with that line makes it because it's really funny.
and I know you can attest in at the premiere, that whole part was just uproarious
Yeah.
in the theater. It got
Yes.
a
Yes.
huge reaction. It also gave us the meme we made of, just because you haven't seen much of Ron Troop doesn't mean Ron Troop hasn't seen much of you.
Oh
You and
man, that cracked me up. I laughed. I genuinely laughed so hard at that. I seriously, I belly laughed, belly, and it came at a perfect time too because remember I said there were ups and downs,
Mhm.
and the one down, and this is me being really transparent, but that's how I am, was when the character posters came
You
out,
didn't get a poster.
and I didn't get a
That's what I was
poster,
going to
and
say.
I wasn't surprised because I had known at that point because being the good guy James is, he gave me a heads up about what was cut out, and and then I just figured, okay, well, shoot, that's not much, so it just wouldn't make sense, right, for me to get a poster, but I was still hoping for one, right? So when it came out, I moved on. I was like, I didn't get a poster, but what made it worse, I just was getting hit up left and right from people being like, "Yo, man, what the hell? Why didn't you get a poster?" You know what I mean? People rubbing salt in the wound, and I was really stoked about it. I was like, "No, it's cool. Trust me, when you see it, it will make sense. It just will be pointless if I got a poster." They said, "No, but you're still part of the Daily Planet." Stuff like that, right?
Sure.
And I was just moving on from it. But all that checking in, it got to the point where I just put off my phone, and it was kind of it was a juxtaposition of feelings. I wish they'll stop bringing it up, but also, wow, people really care. But I was just kind of in my feelings that day, and I always allow myself maybe 2 or 3 hours to feel upset about something or bummed about something, and I move on, right?
Hmm.
And then I got that, and I belly laughed, and let me tell you, it not that I would have been stewing any longer, but that reset me right away. I was
Well, that
cracking
makes
up
me happy.
so
That
much.
makes me happy because I was so happy to see you with that scene came out, but I was sad for you because I wanted I like a well-rounded Planet roster, and I was sad to not see you on a poster. So
Yeah,
that makes me happy to hear. Thank you. I'm glad that helped.
yeah.
Um, Now you, self-proclaimed army brat. I know you said you moved around a lot as a kid. Were comics a part of your childhood? I mean, was that a consistent thing for you?
Yeah, I was in and out. I definitely read comics, but they weren't. And I definitely read Superman comics. But by the time Ron came around, I wasn't reading, which is why I was
Sure.
surprised. But what really stood out for me, I read a lot of your atypical comics like GI Joe.
Hmm.
I love the GI Joe comics, and I was a GI Joe toy collector, so I was all over that. And I lived in Japan for 6.5 years, so I was reading their comics, and yeah, so I was definitely the art of comics. I definitely was into, and to the point where I became a fan of all things comics when it came to toys, any adaptations, and so on. And of course, the Richard Donner films, and that even propelled me back to Superman. I mean, I was young enough to just be flipping through them, but I just remember. I think it was after I saw Superman 2 when I started actively buying Superman comics.
So, not Ron obviously coming along later in the comics and was heavily there and through the death and return storyline, but Ron and Clark are in-laws. They get to be family a
Yeah,
little bit. So there's a
yeah.
little familial connection there as well. Hopefully we get to see some more interaction there in subsequent things. Sounds like James is hard at work on the next chapter of whatever
Yeah.
this in-universe thing is, and I know we've got Peacemaker to look forward to here in just a few days. I've seen the first handful of episodes of that, and it looks fantastic. I love being in this new world of all this stuff actually interconnecting and not just being
Hmm.
kind of on the fringes of everything. But what do you hope to see for Ron down the line on
Yeah.
screen?
Yeah, for Ron down the line, definitely more interactions with the team, and just so it doesn't sound so selfish, I would love to see much more of the Daily Planet, right?
Hmm.
Because on top of having so much fun shooting the stuff that we shot, it was just such a great connection. It felt like a great connection in between takes. We just found ourselves gathering together and having conversation. You know what I mean? And it felt like a family. So I definitely hope to see more of that with the Daily Planet as a whole. And since then, I've learned much more about Ron, like you said,
Hmm.
just being married to Lucy Lane and so on. I would love to see some of that. I would love to see a little bit of backstory stuff for all the Daily Planet folks. And in terms of cross pollinating the DC universe, I definitely would love to see that.
Yeah.
I go back to Star Wars and what they're doing now on Disney Plus and all the shows. I forget his name, but it's the X-wing character. It's the Asian X-wing
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
pilot.
yeah.
Yeah, he pops up in different
Hmm.
things. And then you get so excited, even with that one scene, right? So I would love, love, love to see that for all the Daily Planet members, and I would love for Ron to kick it with Mr. Terrific.
Well, I think the planet being and this kind of goes back into the whole journalism aspect, but
Mhm.
the connective tissue of everything. I mean, what better way? I mean, it's just like Clark being in the planet to, you know where he can be as Superman, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
It's the same. It's the same thing to me with the planet being in the forefront, or
Yeah.
I guess maybe not in the forefront, but just in the conversation with all the bigger things going on, because it is the most trusted voice in this universe, and that's one of the things I love about this iteration is that while the planet is always a character in and of itself in these storylines, be it Smallville or the Donner films or what have you, uh, journalism played a very large part in this, and that's something I know James talked about early on. I know that's something Rachel kind of
Mhm.
went heavily into in her research for the role, and I think what better time in the world we live in today for journalism to actually be important and used and utilized well. But it was great that that was such a driving force of the story, was defeating Lex, but also defeating him in print, and
Yes. Yeah.
getting to have the truth and the voice in journalism to be able to do that. Did obviously, you having that journalism background, was there anything before that first day in set you were like, I need to refamiliarize myself with being in a bullpen? Do I need to
There,
remember
there was a
how?
moment where I thought that, where I thought I don't want to come off as fraudulent to some of my journalism friends, people that I went to school with, and people that I work with, and it really did cross my mind. But then there was just a bit of comfort, and it's funny because one of the things that I got off on when I was in college was writing stories,
Hmm.
newspaper stories. So I wrote for the Berkeley Beacon, which was a school paper at Emerson College, and my beat mostly was going to interview celebs. If they came to town for junkets or what have you, I would go, and I was armed with my own camera, which is how I got into photojournalism.
Hmm.
And occasionally, one of my friends who is an actor, he's actually the State Farm guy, not State Farm. I'm sorry, Liberty Mutual. He plays Doug as Liberty
Yeah.
Mutual. I've known him since the fourth grade. And sometimes he would want to come along and say, "Wait, who are you interviewing today?" He's like, "Oh, I got to come. Can I pretend to be your photographer?" And he would go and pretend to be my photographer. And his photographer name was always David Steele. And I brought him along to Muhammad Ali. I brought him along to Timothy Dalton. I'm a huge James Bond fan.
Yes.
And, and he pretended to be the photographer, even though he messed up the photos. Um, so yeah, so that whole element of journalism and print journalism, even though I was a broadcast major, I would just write articles even if I wasn't doing it for the paper. And sometimes I would do it to see if I still had it, right? Because even when I started at CNN, because that was my first job, was at CNN,
Right.
and I wrote a lot of the newsreels, I missed print. So I would sit and write these articles and try to pitch it to some of the local magazines in Los Angeles. I forget what magazine it was I ended up writing for because they liked my submission. So yeah, it was a whole thing for me. So sitting in that chair and being back in there, I just kept thinking, oh, this is revitalizing those juices again. Because I mean, I was a news nut back then, even before I got into steering more towards film and TV production.
Did you get to see the movie before? I know Rachel and David said they didn't actually sit and watch it until the premiere. Had you already seen it by that point?
That was my very first time.
That was
my
your very first time. So what
Yeah.
was that like in that room? Because it was electric. I mean, the vibes were. I mean, it had to be. I mean,
Yeah.
look, trying to get this character right on screen after so long and so many attempts. He works really well on TV. Movies have been hit or miss since 1978, and so I know the weight on James's shoulders. I know the weight on David's shoulders and everybody involved with this. So expectations were high coming into this, and I know just speaking as a fan and not somebody that's worked in this world, but my expectations were high, and I wanted so much for this cast and all of you to feel it from the fans that everybody truly loved this, and I could not have imagined a more emotional response than being in that theater in mid-July, and I'm sure that felt the same for you.
Yeah, it was a magical day. It was a whole magical day. I'm sure you've heard this from other people, but the cast were on a text thread,
Hmm.
and everyone's so supportive of each other. Where we congratulate folks when they get a booking, we say happy birthday, and Nathan's always kicks off the happy birthday song where he sings one line and then someone else does another voice note and sings another line. We send funny memes. The week leading up to it, everyone was submitting, in a sense, mean tweets about themselves. there was there were some doozies out there, man. But we just have fun with each
The
other.
internet.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. And then the morning of the premiere, we were just excited to see each other and see what everyone was wearing. And the funny thing is, I had made a joke with a video meme of Alfonso Ribeiro doing the spirit tunnel from
Yeah, the
Jennifer
Jennifer
Hudson's
Hudson show.
show.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a popular video meme that's going
Hmm.
around. And I superimposed the Superman premiere in the background, and I put press at the premiere. Hey, there goes Eddie Cathegi, and me taking advantage of their confusion, and that's Alfonso Ribeiro dancing down the
Nice.
premiere line. And I sent that to everyone, and everyone was laughing and cracking up. And Eddie goes, "Yo, man, but that's real. That happens to me every time I go to the premiere with another black actor." And I was, saying like, "Yeah, that's funny." Little little did I know that actually happened a lot at the
Oh
premiere,
wow.
where I got there, and right away, people on the line were clamoring for my autograph, and I was so excited. I was like, "Oh, this is a nice welcome." I was like, "Okay, people like Ron Troupe." I'm signing my autograph, and it wasn't until later on where I won't say who, but there's an actor in the film who actually came up to me and thought I was Eddie, and then it hit me. I said, "Wait a minute, all those autographs I signed." Do they think I'm Eddie?
Fine.
But I
It's
did
fine.
get some positive ID where people say, "Hey, they asked me, can you sign Ron Troop under
Nice.
the name and this and that?" So that was completely fine. But I got a kick out of it. It was funny, and it added to the whole atmosphere of just this amazing premiere. And then with just seeing I mean, literally, I got emotional seeing a good friend of mine who obviously you've spoken with many times, Michael
Oh, I
Rose.
was going to say, in addition to our journalism, the fact that we have to put up with knowing Michael Rosenbaum.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But when I saw him on the arrival line, I don't know why, man, I wanted to cry because we go way back,
Yeah.
and I'm thinking like, man, here we are in a movie that we're both in,
Hmm.
and and you're notably part of that universe as Lex Luthor,
Hmm.
and I'm looking across and I'm seeing you on the red carpet, and you're seeing me on the red carpet, and we actually just hugged and embraced each other for like maybe a good 10 seconds because it was just an emotional feeling. And here we are at this big movie. Then we got inside, and I actually sat next to him in the premiere, and so that was a special moment too. And then I hadn't seen it, so it started, and just hearing the music and seeing it. When I don't know if this happens to you, but this happens to me when sometimes you get the butterflies and the emotional feeling in your body that you don't even realize that you're welling up and that there's a
Oh,
drop right here. Yeah. I
I
would
I
say,
was I was so overstimulated.
yeah, yeah, everything, man. Everything. Crypto grabbing the camera. Like, oh my
Yeah.
God. Mr.
Yeah.
Terrific friggin', at the computer trying to stop the rift. I'm like, oh my God. You know what I mean? Wendell telling Skylar or Perry,
Hmm.
telling Jimmy that, don't call me Chief. And then
Hmm.
I'm welling up every little detail. Things
Hmm.
that don't even emote tears, I was welling up. So it was just this beautiful adventure just to be in a theater and knowing that you're amongst all these people who work so hard, not just the cast and James, but the producers and the
Hmm.
crew and everybody, and you can just feel that energy. And it probably top five most amazing experience of my life.
I walked over that morning just to see the construction because it was so. I mean, it was so intricate and
Yeah.
so massive in scale. Even compared to other premieres I've seen and been to, this one was just really just immersive from
Mhm.
the get go, from the fortress stage and everything. And I just found myself sitting across the street watching the whole thing being built, and I was like, "Oh, I should probably go shower and put on
Yeah,
clothes because I actually have to come back here in a little bit." Um, that's cool that you got to sit with Michael. I think actually. So once we got inside, they were still showing the live stream on the screen because obviously staggering David and Rachel and
hmm
James and everybody. And I know Michael came pretty late, but I feel like they caught you two
Oh no way,
meeting
that's
each
crazy.
other.
That's funny.
I had to go back and watch the footage, but I'm pretty sure they caught you two on there getting your moment together. But um, yeah, everything about that was, I mean, to not even have had a role in that and just be there was a top five moment
Yeah, I
for
was
me.
about to ask how it was for
So,
you.
well, I got to go with one of my no, not one of my oldest friend who actually helped me start this podcast 20 years ago, and he's not a huge Superman guy, but he's a huge movie guy, and I was so emotional from the carpet and everything that once we got in the theater, I was like, I'm exhausted. He was like, the movie's not even started yet, Derek. Like you gotta pepper yourself
Yeah.
just a little bit. So no, it was incredible, and every time it's something phenomenal. And I know I'm biased, but watching it every time, I've just loved it a little more every time. And at that first time, you're like, oh, this didn't happen, or this didn't happen, or I'm surprised James did this or didn't do
hmm
this, and then by that second time, I let all that go, and I was just a fan. And every subsequent viewing has been catching something that I didn't catch before. I know one time I was like, all right, this time I'm just going to go listen to the score, not even going to pay attention to the dialogue. I just want to hear where the music weaves in and out and that kind of thing. So I've caught a little bit more. I've really been eagle-eyed in on the planet stuff the last couple of times because there is so much going on
So
in the
much going on.
bullpen. Jimmy never even really holds a camera in the whole movie, but I did notice the last time that on Skylar's desk there was a dismantled
Yeah.
camera, and there is a photography sign on the side of his cubicle and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So it's been fun to get more immersed in the world with every subsequent viewing. The movie is very fast paced. I mean, we're quite literally,
Yes.
I've said multiple times on this show, we're dropped into it just like David is, right? There in the opening
Mm-hmm.
moments, and we've got that kind of quote unquote little Star Wars opening crawl to give us our
Mm-hmm.
introduction to this world, so we don't have to go through the origin again. But having watched it that first time and having watched it among your coworkers and everybody that got to be a part of it, the message of this film is so wonderful. And I mean,
Yeah.
that's inherently James. I mean,
Yeah.
behind his
Oh yeah.
pen, and how that whole kindness is punk rock has really taken on its own
What a
form.
line.
Yeah, it's. I mean, well, my phone's lighting up right now, but it's. I can't even show it because it's so bright. But it's.
But that
I've got kindness is punk rock is what's.
is it like that Richard Donner opening?
It's in the Richard Donner
That is
lettering.
amazing.
Isn't that
Wow.
great? Yeah, isn't that
Wow.
great? So but
Oh,
it's
you gotta send that
really
to me.
absolutely, absolutely. It's really turned into its own uh evolution of this film, and more than just a Superman story. It's this kindness story, and I think that I'll let you wax eloquently about your fellow cast members, but I think David has pulled off the duality of that role so well. I'll let you speak to that, and being a Superman fan, but also being a fan of David. What your thoughts on that are?
Yeah, it's funny going in. I remember when he was cast, obviously this is before I found out I was going to be in the movie. And I remember seeing him, and then I wasn't too familiar with his work, but I looked at him and I thought, oh yeah, he could play Superman. But all the photos that they were floating around, he was, much thinner
Yeah.
and smaller in scale, but knowing that someone was going to get their hands on him, in this case, Paolo, and he was going to get ripped and taken care of as far as that. But right away, I just knew. I said, oh yeah, he's just looking at him, he's the right
Hmm.
person. But I still didn't know that much about him. And even before seeing him work, and I mentioned this one time on one other podcast, maybe a couple times, but when I first showed up to set, I had a really, really bad case of imposter syndrome. I just
Hmm.
did. For whatever reason, it was just one of those. I just kept thinking, what am I doing here? And I got in my trailer and I took a deep breath, and it became real, you know, where I thought I'm about to get on set soon and I'm going to be working with these professionals who have been doing it much longer than me, right? And I think everyone gets imposter syndrome, so I don't think that's anything out of the ordinary. But I immediately found comfort thanks to David, and it just was more so happenstance, but it was more than that, right? And you hear this all the time about when it comes down to a film, it's and the energy on the film. It's they always say it's dictated by the director, which is true. And James, I mean, you can feel his energy and his presence on the film, and he has a no asshole policy, and it's all about the ethos that he has instilled in his filmmaking, and you can see that. But we all know that in addition to that, the ethos and the tone of the crew and everything about the production, it's also in the hands of the lead. It really is. And if the lead is a rotten person, that trickles down.
Yep.
And no, I mean, besides the fact that it was James's film and he definitely has that policy of kindness on set, it was definitely augmented with David. David just had this energy about him. He felt like a leader, you know? And it's everything that you hear about when it comes down to the lead and how a lead should conduct themselves and how they should be the one uplifting everyone. It's a terrible burden, but whether or not he did it deliberately or but I believe it's the latter, and that's just who he is.
Yeah.
He's a fun guy with fun energy, and he's genuinely a fan of pop culture. We all know he's a fan of Star Wars, and
Yeah.
he was excited to be in this too, and that energy was there. So when I first got to the set, well, not the set, but when I got to my trailer and they summoned me to the hair trailer, that day in particular, I remember I had only seen Rachel and Michaela on set. Actually, Beck and Skylar, because we rode over together. But Rachel and Michaela were taken to the makeup trailer. And I had known that Skylar and Beck were in that trailer also. And I wondered, I said, well, where am I going? What trailer are they taking me to? Because they didn't say the hair trailer, but, they only have a certain number of seats in the makeup trailer. So that's why I went to the hair trailer. And, which is fine. They had to stagger things. But I remember just thinking, oh, I kind of wish I was in the other trailer with them so I can continue to catch up and keep the energy going before we go on set. And I was sitting next to this really large guy who had a towel on his head. And I just kept talking and talking. And I was talking to the hairstylist. And, we were getting a good rapport. And then I heard David said, hey, Chris. And he put out his hand. And I didn't realize it was him. And I shook his hand and he told me his name was David. And it still didn't compute until he took the towel off. And then I saw that it was David and they were doing whatever they needed to do to hold the blackness in his hair.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, wow, here I am sitting in there feeling kind of bummed out that I'm not in the other trailer with the rest of the cast. And I'm getting seated next to friggin' Superman. And it was so exciting. And he was amazing. And he made me feel comfortable right away with that leadership persona that you would expect from a lead in a movie. Mm-hmm. But not just that, again, that's just who he is. And that was reaffirmed a couple times, even on set. The guy is, and we see it when he and James are having a back and forth in the behind the scenes. He takes his craft very seriously.
Oh, yeah.
And I get it. He comes from a deep theater background. And it's the same thing with The Punch. Looking back in retrospect, he was taking that moment seriously. He said, this needs to look real, And again, that's the leader in him. That's the guy who, and not just being the leader, he probably can tell, okay, he's not comfortable with that punch. Let me get him there, right? Mm-hmm. That's David. And, same thing. I remember that day when the day was done. I'm assuming he did it to everybody, but I'm fairly certain he had his little dog, his little King Charles, and he went to everyone's trailer to say goodbye. Who does that? Who knocks on people's trailers' door to say goodbye? I was like, let me take the shuttle back to the hotel. I'm hungry.
See you tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. So he was magnificent. And, I only knew David as Clark for those first couple weeks.
Right.
And I didn't get to see him until Superman in Cleveland. And it was magical.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is I didn't even see him on the street. He was, but it was that. Yeah, it was when they were shooting him on the street. But we, home base where all the trailers were 2 miles away because they couldn't set up home base in the city since they allowed us to close that street for all the rubble. So because of that, they kept us in a holding room. And it was a magical day because I was used to seeing the Daily Planet folks all the time. And we kind of interconnected when we were shooting the interior Daily Planet stuff with the Justice Gang because they were doing that nearby, about 40 minutes nearby. So we were all staying in the same hotel. So I'd already developed a rapport with the Justice Gang and the Planet folks, but this was the one time finally where all the other people, like the engineer and so on, and Gabby and Sarah, where we finally interacted in this holding room. We all got to meet each other. We were hanging out, and David comes back out from the street, and we've all seen the photos with him wearing the black cloak.
Yeah,
because they didn't want anyone to see the suit. And I'm having a brain fart, not even thinking about it until he takes off the cloak. And when I say we all became children in that moment, literally every single one of us. Every single one of us. And man, and here's a something I've never told either, but I'm going to go ahead and tell it because it felt like such a nice, tender, personal moment that I just felt someone else needs to tell the story. I don't want to be the one, but I'm going to tell it. So his wife came to set that day with her baby. And oh man, I just get chills thinking about it. He became a father in that minute. He right away was so excited to see his baby. He obviously had been away from his child, and he took the baby and he was holding the baby, and we all melted. We all melted, especially
you're making me emotional.
Yeah, especially the women and me. The other dudes are probably like, oh, that's cool. But I'm like, oh, God. And we just watching him in his Superman suit holding his baby. And then we're still sitting around talking. And it's a giant room. And to soothe this baby, we could just see in our periphery Superman pushing a stroller around the room. Just pushing this baby in the stroller to soothe this child. And I'm thinking, this can't be real. Again, I'm getting chills. It's crazy. It was crazy. And yeah, so it was magical. And again, not to talk about something so personal. It's not even me spilling the beans. It's just me telling you a testament of how great David is.
Yeah.
Right? He's in work mode, and I've been in work mode. I have a son, and when I'm in work mode, I tell my wife, you need to, and
Yeah.
I'm staying here. But no, he chose fatherhood over Superman.
That's so great. The shooting on the street in Cleveland, I got to walk all those places and see all that. Well, I was there a few weeks ago. But I remember that week or that 10 days that you guys were shooting, and obviously paparazzi being what it is, and then obviously Cleveland wanting to commemorate the production being, in the hometown of Jerry and Joe and everything. There were so many photos coming out, and that was our first real look as fans on this side of the world to what all was happening and getting to watch all of you emerge out of the tea craft, and you all got your individual shots there. That was really cool. That was the first time we really got to see David in the suit proper. We got to find out that he actually had the yellow S on the cape,
Yeah.
and all those little nitpicky things that we were all looking for. But it just felt so real to watch all of that play out in the street and watch all of you interact and like, oh, the Daily Planet crew is emerging from what is this? What's
Yeah.
going to happen? Obviously, this is third act probably, but
Yeah.
I can only imagine what that was like for you guys though. That city was so welcoming. I mean, that city was welcoming to us, and we were only there to help put on a screening of the film. So for you guys to have actually been there and get to be a part of the city for several days had to be a very welcoming feeling, I'm sure.
Oh man, they were so welcoming. Just everyone was so excited. You could feel the energy from the second you got off the plane. My driver, we were driving and he was driving me to the hotel, and he said, "Hey, so just so you know, I'm gonna have to go a roundabout way because your hotel's kind of in the midst of they're shooting this really really big movie. I don't know if you know, they're shooting Superman here." And I'm sitting there in the car thinking, do I tell him? Do I tell him? But he goes, yeah, they're shooting Superman here. And then I finally decide and I allow myself to have these moments every once in a while. I go, by the way, I'm in the movie.
You're allowed.
And
You're allowed that.
yeah. And he was so excited. He was like, oh man, that's amazing, this and that, blah, blah. Who do you play? The city is so excited. There's such a great energy because, you get jaded living in Los Angeles. Every time a street closes down,
Yeah.
and a lot of times you have to shoot around that. They don't even close the street.
Yeah.
You get pissed. So it was cool to see this different energy, this different feeling of people in Cleveland being excited. I checked into my hotel and they said, "Hey, if you look out the window, you can see there's a closed street over there. They're shooting Superman." Everyone was just so excited about it, and I loved every minute of it, and just again walking down the street, just you would hear someone pass and there's chatter. It's like, oh, you see that closed street over there? They're shooting Spider-Man, and I go, hey, it's Superman. It just was it was magical, and just to know that again it's the birthplace of Cleveland, and being able to really soak that in.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole going to the house that you alluded to earlier.
Yeah.
Kayla, Stevie and I went, and Steve, who plays Mr. Happerson, Sidney Happerson, that was on a whim. We had this producer friend of ours said, "You guys have to stop by there. You guys have to." And that day, we had all gone to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in the morning because we all had the day off, except for David. Poor David was working straight through, but we all had the day off, and we took a field trip to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So when we were done, everyone wanted to go back to their hotel, relax, whatever, because we did it really early in the morning before opening hours. But then Stevie and Michaela goes, let's just go by the house. We're in Cleveland. Why not? We're in Cleveland. So that added to the Cleveland experience to actually go over to the house and see it. And then I got back and I thought to myself, okay, now I'm gonna rest. And then Wendell texts me and goes, hey man, you want to go get some soul food? I go, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. And I'm thinking, let's keep it going. Let's see Cleveland. And we ended up in East Cleveland, which, as you know, East Cleveland could be kind of sketchy. But we went and we had some of the best soul food I've ever had in my life. We were the only ones in this place. I swear to you, it looked like a gas station converted to a restaurant. And we were the only ones in there. It was one of those where a woman came up. asked what we wanted, and she was the one who stepped back and cooked it in the kitchen. It took a long ass time,
Yeah.
but that's it. But it made for the Cleveland experience. I really feel like we got the true Cleveland experience because of it. And yeah, it was magical top to bottom.
What do you hope? Obviously, this character has been around for almost 90 years now, and like we said, it's worked really well on screen in some instances, and really sometimes not as well, depending on mileage may vary. But you this one just felt so right on so many different levels, from the players to the set pieces to the dialogue and the music. It's just all came together so perfectly, and it's going to have a lasting, I hate to say legacy, because that was the title obviously at one point, but it's going to have its own legacy and everything. What do you hope the legacy though of this iteration is?
That's a great question. I mean, all your questions have been fantastic, but the legacy for this, I think it goes back to what you said earlier, hope and kindness. You know, hope and kindness, and you know what's special is just seeing that everyone that was the takeaway, and everyone felt and said it.
Hmm.
Everyone I know who's watched the movie, the articles, friends, the outlets, people walking in the street. I walked out, I saw it. I took my son to see it with his football team and his coach and the parents, and we walked out, and there was a guy, maybe 24 years old, with this friend walking out behind us, and he goes, "My heart is just so full right now." I swear to God, those were the exact words. And I thought, wow. And the reason that's so special for the obvious reason, but James kept reminding us of that on
Yeah.
set. We would, if we do a take and if it was too funny, he would say, God, okay, I love that, but let's do another take because guys, remember, this isn't Guardians, or this isn't, a comedy.
Yeah.
We can have light moments, but remember, this is about hope. This is about kindness. That is the theme. He kept reminding us of that. You know what I mean? Just to kind of keep us on that path. And so to see him instill that frequently in the film meant that it was mission accomplished for James. Because if he was saying that over and over in the film, and you have a 22-year-old, the age where we're cynical, walking out of a film saying
Yeah.
my heart is so full, mission accomplished. So that's what I hope the legacy is many years from now. I look back at the Christopher Reeve films and I think, fantastic. That was my introduction.
Sure.
And I think it's synonymous with John Williams to me.
Hmm.
Um, and there are many things you could take away from that. But I want people to look back on this and say, oh, this kind of revolutionized filmmaking and the theme of filmmaking. Swingers came out and suddenly everyone wanted to do, those independent films that were snappy and cool. You saw how that
Yeah.
kind of really influenced independent film and independent comedies, right? The Hangover came out, and that influenced big budget comedies, right? You have those films and those canons that set the tone for Hollywood for a generation or for a time period. And I think that's going to be Superman's legacy, that we're going to go back to kindness in filmmaking. And that's what I'm excited about.
And I think, even to your point, seeing, we see in Hollywood a lot a movie do really well, and then they take the wrong lesson away from that. Oh, we need to make more of this, and that wasn't what people were, respond, like Barbie. Everybody saw Barbie and they're like, oh, we need to make more toy movies, and it's like, no, that wasn't the message of Barbie. That was, you're missing, you're honing in on the IP, and that wasn't what they were going for there,
Yeah. Yes.
and stuff like that. And needle drops in movies over the last 15 years have become their own thing, and I think James is a huge part of why that has done so
Yeah.
well. But you also see how horribly that can go wrong
Yeah.
if the wrong moment or the wrong song choice is used, or even
Oh
the wrong
yeah.
editing is done. And if you had told me on paper, I would have punched you in the throat if you had told me, how the movie was going to end before I saw it. But if you had told me, oh, it's going to end with Iggy Pop and home videos, and I would have been like, what? It's supposed to end with him flying out in space and smiling and winking at us or whatever. And I wouldn't trade that ending for anything, because I think it is just this picture perfect moment, no pun intended, of, I mean, the whole film can be wrapped up in that one 360 moment of watching David, you know, take in his legacy, take in his
That beaming
upbringing at
smile.
that moment.
Yeah, I that was completely brand new for me. Again, I hadn't seen the film. I know David and Rachel hadn't seen the film, but I think what separates, well, I really hope in their case because they have such a big part, me from that is I didn't read the script. I refused to read the script. You know, you get your sides and you know what your
Sure.
scenes are, and even when you go to your trailer, on top of the sides being emailed to you, your sides are in your trailer. So I stuck to that because I remember when I got the script, I opened it and I started reading it and I saw, you know, the crawl and how it's described and,
Hmm.
Superman hits the snow. And I'm thinking, whoa, what the hell happened to Superman?
Hmm.
And I go, oh, I don't want to know. Oh, man, I don't want to know.
Applause to you, because I don't know that I could have been that strong.
Yeah. And I closed it because, they send it to you. It's encrypted. I closed it. I said, yeah, I'm going to stick to my sides, which made for a really funny experience because every once in a while, what's happening in this scene?
I was going to say, so when it came time for you to emerge from the T-craft, did you fully understand what was going on at that
No.
point? Or?
I mean, it kind of came together in my head. I started putting pieces together. And because
Yeah,
I write, I can kind of predict, you know what I
sure.
mean? But that also is why I don't like to be spoiled because, I never watch upcoming or coming next, especially when I used to watch Next TV. Next episode, or the few times that streaming does it, I don't do it because even if they don't give you much, I write enough to understand I know where this is going. And I
Sure.
hate to be spoiled. And I commend Matthew Weiner for this, for Mad Men, because Mad Men's one of my favorite shows, and I've worked with Matthew before, and I got confirmation on this because I would never, I would always do this because I'd watch it with my wife, and it would come on, what was coming on next episode. And one day she goes, "Can you do me a favor and just watch one of them?" I said, "No, why would I do that?" She goes, "Because they don't make sense." I'll still figure it out. I said, "No, you
Yeah.
won't figure it out. They don't make sense." And I watched it. Like, wait, what? It was all over the place. So when I first met Matthew Weiner, I asked him, I said, "I got to ask you, your coming ups, your previews for the next episode."
Hmm.
He goes, "Oh, yeah, yeah." He goes, "I hate spoiling things. I hate previews. I hate all that. But I fought with AMC about that. And AMC obviously won. And I said, okay, you won. And I did it, but I have final say on that cut, and I just slap things together. I deliberately make it not make sense, so you have
It's
no idea what's coming.
it's funny you say that because I compared those. Did you watch Barry with Bill
Yeah,
Hader?
yeah,
That was the same way. Those
yeah.
next weeks were
That's funny. I didn't know that.
so nonsensical. It's nonsensical and non sequitur, and it made no sense whatsoever. So that's
Well, I,
funny.
I didn't. I didn't start watching Barry actually. For real quick, just to input there, until I worked with Anthony. Again, we don't have any scenes together,
Yeah.
but the Justice Gang, we kind of hung out a lot when we were shooting the interior of the Daily Planet because they were shooting not too far away. And Anthony is an amazing guy, an
Hmm.
amazing guy. And I mean, I can go on one by one about how everyone is amazing
I'm
because there's
sure.
not
Yeah.
one bad person. Everyone is just absolutely amazing. But we were hanging out one night at dinner, and James was just talking about how great Barry is. And I knew my wife had already watched it, and I said, "Yeah, my wife keeps talking about it," and they were like, "Oh, you should watch it." So just because I'd gotten to know Anthony, that's when I went back and watched it, and I thought, "Man, this guy's a genius."
And he steals the show,
Yeah,
and he steals several scenes that he's in the movie as well,
yeah,
and it does a fantastic job. It's really just such a well-rounded out cast
yeah,
for you guys. Everybody just brought their A game. I mean, from David to obviously people who from Mr. Handsome to
yeah.
to, to people who didn't even have speaking roles, but everybody just fits so well in this world. And I know James's bread and butter is world building, and
Yes,
he
yeah,
does such a good job at that. From the Mighty Crabjoy, all these different things to introduce, and I wanted to be in that world. I felt so enamored with it. Like I said, even just down to the idea of how well respected journalism was
yeah.
in the course of the film, that it made me so happy that, first of all, that it was painting Superman as this hopeful character, but also this world that Oh, there's a kaiju. Yeah, it's Metropolis. It's Metropolis. What do you mean people are exiting to Gotham City? It's going
Yeah.
from bad to worse, you know? So it I'm just so excited to see more of this universe from the eyes of these characters and to get to live in it more because I think there's so many more pockets of it that are going to open up, and I hope the Daily Planet gets to be a huge aspect of that because again, it is always there in the forefront of the pages of DC Comics, and you have the world's most famous journalist, the intrepid Lois Lane, at your disposal.
Yeah.
That should really be there for all. So,
Yeah,
I
I hope to see so many other cast members in other iterations because, and again, if there's one thing I can go back to about the premiere, the other special part about the premiere was actually finally seeing, your coworkers work, you
yeah.
know, and just being honestly pleasantly surprised by everyone. There wasn't a single person that I thought, oh, they're good, they're good. I was beaming and I felt like a happy brother or a happy friend. It was genuine excitement. Even when the premiere was over, I went over. I walked over to the premiere party, and the first person I saw was Sarah. Who plays Eve,
Hmm.
and I went up to her and I said, Sarah, you are a scene stealer. And
Hmm.
she said, oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I think it was her agent that was with her. And he goes, see, I'm telling you, I was just telling you. She's like, yeah, he was just saying that. And I said, no, Sarah, I'm sure you're going to hear it for the rest of the night, for the rest of your life. But you were great. Because I had that one quick, actually, you can't tell it's a scene but there was more that the Daily Planet, that Steve, Kat, and Ron does when she jumps into Jimmy's arms, but it didn't make the cut. But I
Oh
saw,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, I saw that, and I remember thinking, "Oh, that's funny." Like, wow, that's actually really funny, and that was that. But I didn't think more about it, and then I saw the film, and I thought she was magical, and
Oh yeah.
yeah,
Even when she's draped around Skylar and Wendell says, "How long have they
yeah,
been hooking up?" That about 3 months. Just like it's just so many great little moments that I go back to and revisit. I'm like,
yeah.
that I
Everyone was so good, and
yeah.
again, I couldn't have been more happy. Just the love fest, and everyone, it was mutual. Everyone felt the same way. The love fest that we all gave each other, and it's just, yeah, everyone.
Well, it's so good to know that not only is the positivity been the message of the film and has been embraced so well, but then behind the scenes, the positivity that went into making it, I mean, it just shows. It shows so well on the screen. So I appreciate all of you for bringing this to life, and to James for making the call on all of you that made this happen because I think it's really something magical.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate James for bringing us together because yeah, everyone, we've, like I said, we've become friends, and everyone works so hard, and everyone really committed. And as you can see in a lot of the behind the scenes that's circulating, just how much work everyone put into it, stunt wise, even, seeing Gabby do her stunts,
Yeah, yeah,
you know.
and so much practical stuff too.
Yeah.
It's just
Oh,
incredible.
everything was so practical. I'm glad you said that. Everything, down to even the box I had to carry when we were running to the T craft. The prop master told me that doesn't look light. I mean, that doesn't look heavy. I said,
Yeah,
okay,
yeah,
let me
load up.
clench my biceps, and he's like, no, 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 and he starts putting stuff in it, and I'm thinking, oh, wait, what? And we did so many takes running up those stairs, and I was drenched by the time I was done because the box was so heavy. But everything was so practical.
I love that all of you walking upstairs. I love, and then obviously on to go back to the character posters, you can tell who obviously had who had photo shoots and who they were pulling
Yeah.
from for, like Beck is just holding his
Just holding
baseball
his
glove and
stuff.
all that
Oh my
stuff,
god.
which
I
I love.
died when I
But
saw that character poster. I said, "Oh my
it's so
god, I
good
love that they did that."
to the point I was almost expecting Jimmy to be holding the cork board on
Yeah,
his.
yeah. It's and it's so funny too because again, I mean, look, just to reiterate, when those character posters came out, I was so excited for everyone because those were the coolest posters.
They
And
are.
again, going back to the love that everyone has and the fun that everyone has, and I'll send it to you. It's a funny photo where I think it was I forgot who was driving. It was when the character posters first came out, and they started putting them all over cities. And every
Hmm.
time people would see it on the cast text thread, we would text it to each other and say, "Oh, look at," and we would tell the intersections in LA where you could find those character posters. And there was this. I want to say it was somewhere on Ventura. I want to say it was probably Ventura and Tahunga, almost by that 7-Eleven, where
I
there's
know
a
exactly where you're talking about. Yep.
yeah, yeah, and there's a long stretch where they fit all the character posters. Because
Hmm.
sometimes you would see it and it'd be maybe just the Justice Gang and so on, but this was everyone, right? And then at the very end of the last character poster, there's a bus stop, and you see this dude wearing a reflector safety vest and a hat, and he happens to be black, and it says heat strokes are serious. You know, protect yourself. And I zoomed in on that. I'm like, hey guys, here's my character poster. And then,
Made it.
Gabby's so funny. Gabby goes, hey, you're saving us from heat strokes. Take that seriously.
Ron Troupe is an advocate, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, it's just fantastic.
Christopher, thank you so much for coming on. I've really enjoyed talking to you. Everyone, please watch the Kelly Clarkson Show. Emmy Award winning, Mr. Christopher
Thank you.
McDonald. Thank you. I
Got that over my
appreciate
shoulder.
it.
Just had
Oh,
to-
well, I didn't even see it. Okay, so it's right there. It's by the plant. It's by the
yeah,
plant.
it's over there. Just pick it up the plant. Yeah.
Ties the room together. I hope to see more of Ron in the future. I hope to see more of Ron at the cubicle and outside the bullpen as well. So we hope you come back and talk to us again.
Derek, I appreciate it. I had so much fun, and again, fantastic questions. Oh, real quick, you said so journalism background. Can I ask real quick? Did you start? What did you get a degree in journalism? I'm just curious.
I did. I won't use this on the show. Because they've all heard this before. I was a theater major. I thought I'm going to teach. Well, I thought I was going to direct, and I was like, no, I'm going to teach. But I honestly, from the time I was a child, I wanted to be a newspaper reporter because of Lois Lane. 1,000%. Like I'm not. That's not me just gawking at all. Like I was so enamored with her as a kid, and I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world to get to be in a newspaper bullpen. My uncle was a newspaper reporter, and I was like, I'm gonna do that one day. And so yeah, once I got into school and was like, I'm not gonna direct. What am I gonna do with that? So I switched to journalism. So yeah, I was entertainment reporter and did politics, oddly enough, for about 15 years up until COVID hit, and then our tiny little newspaper took a dive, and I was like, I think it's probably time for me to go because I could see the writing on the wall happening. So
That's
I'm
amazing.
out and have done mostly freelance since then. This show I started in college because I didn't want to go to class, and we were, there would be about 20 of us that would get together and watch Smallville every week.
No way. Are you serious? That's crazy.
And yeah, so
Wow.
it turned into this. Then it turned into, okay, well, we'll barbecue, we'll cook out. So like 20 of us would get together.
Wow.
We were broke college kids. Everybody'd bring something. We'd cook it and watch Smallville. And podcasts weren't even. This was 2004, 2005.
Oh, you were way ahead. Yeah.
That wasn't even a thing
Yeah.
yet. I think on Apple it was called iTunes Radio. It wasn't even called podcasting yet.
That's right.
So yeah, we've just kept it going for 20 years because what else have I got, better to do other than deal with 3 kids and businesses and all that. So I don't golf, I don't hunt. This is my hobby.
Yeah.
So it's had its own highs and lows, but I got to be at the premiere last month. And that was
yeah. I mean, if it all came down to that, it was well worth it.
that's what I said. I didn't ever expect that. I mean, I've been, I got to work on Smallville a little bit on the writing side, and I've done work for Warner. I've written for DC, but it's always just kind of been on the fringes and never, anything full time or anything like that. But it's always just fun to get to hobby horse in that world whenever I've been granted the opportunity. So when they emailed and they were like, "We'd like you to come," I was like, "Yes, please, yes. Don't play it cool, Derek. Play it cool. Don't come on too strong." So, but that was. I hate to get into it on the show too much because I always feel like I'm bragging, and because I'm sure there were people who more well deserved to be there than I was. But that was an emotional day from start to finish. I mean, it was just, I can't even imagine what it was like for all of you, but just as a fan everybody tells me, you're not a fan, you're an academic. You're a little more highbrow than a fan. I really just, I didn't want to go in the theater because I didn't want to leave the carpet. And of course I was boiling hot in a suit.
Oh.
out there. That
Oh, I
that
was
red,
drenched.
that red was the most vibrant red, and everything
Yeah.
else. That sun bounced off of it so much. I really hate that we didn't get a picture together because I got to talk to almost everybody. It felt like except for David and Rachel, and I was really hoping to get a picture with you, and it didn't get to. But
Oh man,
I
bummer.
I I didn't want to go inside because I was like,
Yeah.
oh, then it's over. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. Then
and
it's over.
my buddy Graham was like, it's not over. You get to watch the movie with and
Yeah.
everybody. I didn't get to go to the after party. I wasn't that special, but it was.
I spent most of that time eating anyway.
It looked incredible. I had people were sending me pictures on the inside. I was like, that
Yeah.
looks like so much fun. I'm just gonna go over to the Kodak Center and watch from across the street. So I did. I went up to the balcony and I just kind of stood there for
Oh,
about
that's
45
amazing.
minutes
That's
watching.
amazing.
Just the ultimate FOMO, and I was like, all right, I can go home now. So, dude, thank you. I really appreciate this.
Man,
That meant a lot
thank
to me.
you. The pleasure is all mine, and thank you for inviting me on. I really appreciate it.